A Roman army that has run out of food reserves is fighting a Carthaginian contingent under Hanno. The Romans are slightly outnumbered, and to make matters worse, another force under Hannibal Gisco is attacking their camp in hopes of enveloping them from the rear. Stay tuned as the first major battle of the First Punic War, which pitted Rome and Carthage against each other for over 23 years, is about to begin. Year 265 BC. Sicily was mostly occupied by Carthage, and there were also small cities with mostly Greek settlers, Syracuse being the richest and most prominent. Decades earlier, they had hired Italian mercenaries from Samnium and Campania to attack the Carthaginians, but the plan failed completely after the death of Agathocles, who was paying the mercenaries. Seeing themselves without their main source of income, the criminals decided to attack the inhabitants of Messana, killing all the men and dividing the women among themselves. These individuals called themselves Mamertines and engaged mainly in piracy and used to attack other cities in Sicily. They came into conflict with Hero II, known as the Tyrant of Syracuse, and after he had defeated them in an open field battle, he proceeded to besiege the city. For this reason, the Mamertines requested help from Carthage, who intervened and sent his men to the city, which forced Hero to retreat to avoid confrontation with the Carthaginians, who at this time were the dominant empire in the region. But obviously Carthage had other intentions, such as annexing the city to their empire. And so the Mamertines asked Rome for help. The Republic had just expanded its territories along the Italian peninsula and had never fought battles outside of it. But they decided to respond by sending a force which successfully captured Messana in 264, thus starting the First Punic War, a conflict that would last 23 years. During the following years, Syracuse allied with Rome, and the Carthaginians were defeated on multiple occasions, so they were forced to concentrate their forces in the city of Akragas, which they used as a base of operations. It is important to clarify that the Romans called this city Agrigentum, and that Akragas was the previous name in Greek. After several clashes in favor of Rome, the Roman consuls Megellus and Vitalis decided to start a siege to take control of this important point of resistance. They had about 40,000 men and proceeded to build a series of ditches around the city to cut off any supplies from outside. They concentrated their force south of the settlement, near the temple of Asclepius. This was possible because Akragas was surrounded by rivers on both sides, and thus small Roman garrisons were built on the nearby areas. The Carthaginian commander of the city, Hannibal Gisco, sheltered about 50,000 people inside the city and decided to resist the siege while waiting for reinforcements. Initially, the resistance had no major problems, but after 5 months, the food reserves began to run out, and Hannibal sent messengers to Carthage, asking for help as soon as possible, and they sent an army under the command of Hanno. The troops landed at Heraclea Minoa, and from there marched towards Herbasus, which was an enemy communication and supply point, and promptly captured it. They then set out for Akragas, and after some successful engagements against the enemy cavalry, took up a position on a nearby hill, around a mile from the enemy forces. This way, they successfully cut the Romans from their supply line. This forced the attackers to form up in front of the hill, inviting Hanno to do battle, but he refused. No doubt he had done the right thing. There was no way the Romans would attack him up the hill, and it was only a matter of time until they ran out of food. This stalemate lasted for over 2 months, and the situation was not good for the Romans. With their communication and supply lines completely cut, their reserves of food were running out. Attacking Hanno was not possible, but if they decided to abandon the area, then they would have to lift the siege. The plan was working in favor of the Carthaginians, but unfortunately for their commander, the situation inside the city was desperate. It had already been about 7 months since the siege began, and they had almost no more food. Hannibal was sending them smoke signals to end the blockade as soon as possible, so Hanno was forced to act immediately. Hanno's exact forces are unknown, mainly because ancient historians give different figures, but according to Diodorus Siculus, the Carthaginians had 50,000 infantry, 6,000 cavalry, and 60 elephants. The Roman forces consisted of about 8 legions, which would indicate that they had about 30,000 infantry and 10,000 cavalry, which means that they had a slight numerical disadvantage over the enemy, especially considering that there were mercenaries taking refuge inside the city of Akragas who could also join in the fight. There are different versions on how the battle happened, but the most accepted is that Hanno deployed the Carthaginian infantry in 2 lines, with the elephants and reinforcements in the second and the cavalry in the wings. As for the Romans, it is more than certain that they placed the cavalry in the wings and the infantry in the center. This formation was the most commonly used by the soldiers of the Republic at the time. The battle began, and all sources agree that the combat was long, possibly extending throughout the day, without either side being able to prevail decisively at the beginning. According to the historian Zonaras, Hanno expected Hannibal to attack the Romans from the rear to envelop the enemy on both sides. Aware of this, the Romans hid some of their troops near the city, and when the attack took place, the Carthaginians who came out of the city were taken by surprise and promptly defeated. It is important to keep in mind that the besieged had little food for several months, so the soldiers were undoubtedly very weak and could not face the Roman troops that awaited them. As for the battle, one version says that the Romans sent some of their men to the rear and that this gave them a great advantage, surely because of the panic that could have been unleashed in the enemy army when they were surrounded. However, whether this maneuver occurred or not, what is certain is that the Roman troops of the main force gradually managed to break the Carthaginian front, and this caused panic among the troops that were in reserve, possibly causing the elephants themselves to get out of formation and begin to trample their own soldiers as they tried to beat a disorganized retreat. The Carthaginians fled in panic as they were pursued, and the Roman cavalry proceeded to quickly assault the enemy camp, successfully capturing several elephants. That same night, Hannibal and his mercenaries managed to escape from the city, and the Romans proceeded to pursue him, but failed to capture him, deciding instead to concentrate their forces on occupying the city. Sadly for the remaining inhabitants inside, the city was sacked and some 25,000 citizens were sold into slavery. While Akragas had finally been captured, the fact that Hannibal had escaped meant that the consuls received no credit for the victory, and to make matters worse, the cruel attitude of the soldiers against the citizens caused other Sicilian cities to resist Rome's presence on the island. It's also important to mention that some sources say that the Romans lost 15,000 men during the siege as a result of starvation and skirmishes that took place during that time. Yet it's likely that the dead were mostly slaves or laborers. Such high casualties contributed to the consuls not receiving praise after the conflict. Nevertheless, by 261, the Republic had almost total control of Sicily, and having successfully expanded its territory for the first time outside Italy, the Romans began to venture throughout the Mediterranean by building large military fleets, which the Romans would soon use to try to capture the Carthaginian-held islands of Corsica and Sardinia. We will soon release part 2 of this series, so don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss that video as soon as it's made public. We would also appreciate it if you could leave a comment to let us know what you thought of today's video, and above all, to help us get more subscribers. Once again, thank you for being with us thus far, and don't forget to give us a like and share this video with your friends so they too can join us in our march as we travel in time and witness the great battles that have shaped our world. Until next time, see you soon.